toxic positivity just negates life. Like, life is always great. Like, this past year has shown us, year and a half has shown us, life can suck sometimes. And it's okay to grieve the suckage, to be upset you hadn't been able to travel and see friends and hug people. That's been my thing. It's okay to have those feelings. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean you're not trusting God enough. It doesn't mean all the reasons we assign to it. It just means you're human and you're feeling the feels. That's okay too.
Yeah.
If you try to cover it up, it's kind of like the Ready Whip example we had a couple weeks ago, where you're just covering it up.
And
underneath there, just take a couple bites. You're going to get there. You'll smell it. It's still going to be there. And positivity, I think people think, oh, if I'm just positive, all the woes go away. And like you said, it just piles up even more until it's an even bigger monstrosity that you have to deal with later.
Right. So speaking of like the church and all of the, and these people that say these nice things, like toxic positivity and all of these statements that we hear, and I think we should say a couple of them, it
Please.
Immediately shuts down any conversations about emotions. If you're going, wow, I'm having a really hard, if you're venting to somebody, I'm having a hard day, this situation happens, and they're just like, be positive. Like, what do you say back to that? What do you even be? There's no conversation. It almost shuts the conversation down of there's nothing else that you can say because they've completely invalidated you.
Well, and indirectly, they're telling you you're not allowed to be anything but positive. That's toxic as all get out. Like, let's stop invalidating that people are going to have feelings. And I know you've talked about a lot of the different feelings that you can have, and you can have them all simultaneously. Yes, you can be positive, but still be dealing with a very heavy issue of a family member on hospice that's about to die. You're positive on camera today so that people can see you and have the happy face, but deep down inside, you have this kind of hurt that's going on that makes you go crawl in your room and sit in the dark in the middle of the night sometime. I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
And how do you process through those other emotions besides happy and positive if you don't face them head on and acknowledge they're there?
There's the problem. Like, I talked about this on Better with Brittany 1 week. I talked about this idea that people don't know emotions outside of happiness or sadness. They don't identify them. They've never been taught. Like, the very like, even emotionally advanced people like know the Inside Out 5, the Disney movie Inside Out 5. They know fear, disgust, anger, joy, and sadness. Like, that's the 5. And mostly people only know anger, sadness, and joy. Like, that's it. That's what people know as far as emotions. But there's so many more. If you don't know how to identify what you're feeling, you can't process. Like, you have to, it's just like the step programs of, an alcoholic or someone who's addicted to something. They have to identify, I have a problem. You have to start there with identity. So in order to identify what your process, like, in order to process, you have to identify what the hell you're processing. And so if all you've been told your whole life is be positive, you got to be happy, and it's either happiness or sadness. If you're not happy, then you automatically must be sad. And that's not always the truth. So as far as the person who I'm losing, I can look at it 100 different ways. I know that this person has been in pain for years. And so I am excited for them, for that sweet release of pain, that they will no longer feel that pain. But at the same time, I'm sad that they won't be here anymore. But I'm also afraid for the people who are closest to him, like live in the house with him. I'm afraid for them. I am sorrowful, like, for my children who this is their grandfather, for all, like, not blood related, but like, that's their grandfather. They call him Papa. Like, he's not going to be here anymore. And I think about all the future, all of that, but I've identified all of that instead of going, well, he's going to be in a better place. Maybe that's true. Maybe that is true, but it shuts down all of those other feelings that I'm having and others are having dealing with this.
Well, and there's a lot of layers to feeling what you feel about him, because he was a strong figure positively in your life for so long, whereas other people in your life were not so strong in your life in a good way. So there's even some symbolism to this loss, meaning you're losing a part of yourself. I've been meaning to talk to you about this off the air, but knowing that this is somebody that was so seminal in your life. It's kind of like when you're going to lose me someday. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But if you lost Wildman, it'd be the same way. Somebody so seminal in your life that you can't even imagine. In fact, you and I have had those discussions about Wildman. I don't know what I would do if I didn't have Wildman in my life. If to go away for some reason, it would be my world would crumble. And yeah, no amount of toxic positivity or any kind of positivity is going to help you in that moment.
I was about to say, let somebody toxic positivity me if I lose my husband. Let somebody come at me, because Brianka is coming out.
Yes, Brianka will become permanent, not just Brittany's alter ego. It will be Brittany. Brianka will be Brittany.
Don't come at me with that. And I try to be calm with certain people. So my mom, very much into the Christian culture, and whereas like I respect where she's coming from, my mom is like so bad about toxic positivity with herself. Like I listen to how she talks. I'm like, whoa, mom, hold up, rewind, because she'll feel something and she's like, no, I'm not gonna feel that. No, God's got that. And I'm like, you're right, but honey, that's hard. Like, just pause for a second. You keep pushing this away and not dealing with it, and so you can put on a fake smile. Like, honey, deal with that. You got to deal with that, because if you don't, what happens is we have a falling out, like we did. My mom and I had a recent falling out, and we're okay now, but it was her continuing to push things back and push things back and push things back, and maybe even no, it wasn't me, because I say what I feel. I don't do that no more. I don't try to be quiet about how I feel anymore. But it was just this pushing down until that shadow self takes over and explodes. I was like, nope, I don't like that. And there's this big explosion. But it was that toxic positivity of she wasn't letting herself be anything but positive in these really hard, gut-wrenching experiences.
Yeah, and she's not uncommon.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and again, not to bemoan, if that gives people peace in their heart so they don't get into that deep malaise, okay, go for it. But just realize, until you face those other emotions, all the positivity in the world ain't gonna help that. I mean, and I gotta admit, like, I bought into the be positive and stay positive. A lot of people do. And we're not trying to bemoan that if that's you and that's who you are naturally, because some people will say, well, I'm just naturally positive. I'm like, so you never have any bad things that happen? Well, I do, but I manage it by staying positive about the situations. And I'm like, okay, but what happens to your body when you have positivity and yet you have resentment, and yet you have anger about a situation, and yet you have disappointment, you have betrayal happen? All those things, if you don't manage those emotions, they're going to manage you, and it's going to manifest physiologically.
Yes, if you don't manage them, they're going to manage you. That's really good. That's a good one. This is where that idea of positive, negative, neutral comes in. So, yes, we all know what positive looks like, and we all know what negative looks like. Typically, we know what that looks like, the end of the spectrum. But in the middle, we have this idea of neutrality. This is where, for me, neutrality honors me the most. Where I'm having in difficult situations, it's easy to be positive about my brand new, beautiful, redone office. Like, that's easy. That's easy to be positive about. It's easy to be positive about my house. Like, there are things that are easy to find positivity around, but then there's things that are very easy to find negativity with, like losing a loved one. And so I try to find neutrality. Neutrality, just, I'm not happy about this, but I'm not going to let myself spiral about this either. And so that's when I start thinking that, okay, what can I find that's balanced? What can I find that's, okay, this sucks. This is hard, but I can do this. I can go, I just, that place of neutral. I'm trying to think of another example. Oh, listen, I got a wild man story for you, and you're going to laugh at this one. I don't know if I've told you this one yet. So the guys at work joke around with my husband about who I am. They've seen a couple of my things. They know what I talk about. And a couple of the guys even come over to the house, and I'll do what I do. I like pick out their little statements that they say. I'm like, oh, so that happened. I'll do that. So they all know. Well, Chris has a new boss, and his new boss comes in, and Chris is having a really bad day. Like, he's also very close to this person that we're losing, and we had just gotten the news that we were down to days, and and he was just not having a good day. There were new changes at work, stuff not going on, like just not going good. And so he wasn't like in a negative, nasty mood, but he also wasn't like smiling and he was neutral. He just was, I'm just here. That's the best I can do. I'm just showing up. And so his boss pulls him aside in the office, and he's like, listen, you got to leave all that stuff at the door. Okay. Oh. You gotta smile. You gotta boost morale here. And Chris almost starts chuckling, and the guy in the office with him starts chuckling because they're like, he don't know. He don't know his wife. They don't know. And so he comes home and tells me this story, and I'm like, where's he at? Let me at him. But it's like the workplace that you're supposed to drop everything at the door. Like, are you kidding me? Like, what?
Oh, I worked in retail, and I had almost that exact thing verbatim. Don't bring your problems to work. And I agree as a principle, you don't want to have a customer be influenced by a negative energy. But if he was being neutral and he wasn't expressing anything negative, but he just wasn't jovial, I don't think we don't have any obligation to be jovial to anyone. And we don't know what people are going through. Like, I've had a lot of judgment over the past year and a half as I've gone through something extremely difficult on me. And people are like, oh, well, you just need to give it to God and let it go. And you need all kinds of things. But you get the... And like, you have no idea what I've had to deal with. And I know a lot of people have had to deal with all kinds of stuff. But that's the point. We don't know what anybody is going through. So why do we demand positivity when maybe all I want to do is kill myself? Let's get real. Like, there's people, they're on the brink of that, and they're on the brink of starting an addiction of some sort, not just like food, but drugs, alcohol, whatever. Let's be a little more kind and cognizant that life can be tough. And I'm looking at a little lady that knows all about life being tough over this past year and a half for you has been incredibly tough. But you're still here, not because you kept a positive attitude about it all, but because you decided to deal with it, feel the feels in the moment, have your moment, have friends that you can call when you want to express them, or go hole up in a room and not talk to anybody. That was your modus operandi for a while. You're better at that than you used to be. But it didn't take positivity. It took working through those emotions, feeling them, and not running away from them. I think that's what positivity does to become toxic. Is it pretends like you're not allowed to have those feelings and process them. And here's the thing too. I have grown so much as a man in this past year and a half of going through probably the most horrendous thing I've ever gone through in my life. And that includes being beat as a kid. Tells you how serious it is. And I have learned so much. I have changed. I have gotten the lessons from that. Not because I stayed positive through it all, but because in the midst of it, I was like, I need to, and I learned lessons and I started applying, and it gave me perspective that I didn't have. Whereas if I kept a positive attitude, all that perspective would have never happened.
So I view like positivity in chaos as perfection, which we all know is crap. There's no such thing. And me as a perfectionist and have very deep perfectionist tendencies, like both situational and things that have been put on me and my personality in general, like I strive for perfection and everything. Like, trying to be positive when your life is literally falling apart. Like, that's like you saying, I'm going to be perfect. And it doesn't happen. It's not a thing.